Hello friends! Today I'm going to show you my process for selecting the paper and selecting the sketch that I want to use for the photos I'm going to scrapbook. So a lot of times I will work backwards. I'll choose the paper first and then choose photos to go with it, and that's kind of what I did here because as I've pointed out before, this photo here is on the cover of Close to My Heart's catalog, and looking at the photo and all the papers, it all goes really, really well. So I was thinking that I would use that collection. So I got it all out and I bought multiples of this pack because I absolutely love it. But in reality, my photos are actually quite a bit brighter than this one. It looks like they warmed it up and made it a little bit darker than my photos are in real life. I started thinking, well, I can still make it work. The colors will still go. There's still, reds, and we've got red and we've got blues. This one brings in a whole bunch of colors, and that one could work. But as I started bringing in the blue, I thought, you know what? The blue is just not quite right. I do have some darker blue here in our vests, but there is a lot of blue-green in the water, in the mountains there's a lot of green. There's a lot of brighter blue in the sky. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to set the paper aside and I'm going to select my sketch. So let me show you that process. Now here I have the sketchbook from the creative design team. We put this out a couple of months ago. This is 12 by 12 sketches, and we also have an 8.5 by 11 sketchbook that I have adapted a lot of these sketches to work for 12 by 12, or they're great if you are an 8.5 by 11 scrapbooker. We also have 6 by 8 sketches, but I pulled out a few that might work for my photos, and so I wanted to show you my thought process as I looked at each one of these sketches. So here's the first one I pulled out. I think that this one is fun. It's got the pattern block or color block of those 4 6 by 6s in the background. You would not necessarily think that this would work because we've got all 4 by 6 and 6 by 4 photos for this. But let me just show you how I look at a sketch to adapt it. I look at the background of the sketch in addition to the photo placement, but I want to see if my photos will fit in place of some of those photos on the layout. So for example, this one, he's kind of pointed that way, so I would want that to be down here. And then this one, let's see, this one I'm pointed that way, and I want this one to be more of a feature photo, I think, because it's bigger and more close up. So I'm actually going to put this one here, and this one might be one that's over on this side. And so if I arrange these in the same manner as the sketch, I don't have another 6 by 4, but I could pull this down and do something like this, maybe replace this one here, and do something like that instead. So I can still have this same background, but just rearrange my photos a little bit. And then that way I've got a little embellishment spot here. And instead of having the one 6 by 4 over here, I could maybe do something like this. So that was the first option. And then I kept going and thinking, okay, is there something that I'm gonna like better? Because this, I don't love this configuration over here. So let's start with this one here. So this one, we've got our pattern paper mostly at the bottom. This background could be pattern paper or cardstock, whatever you want. And so I am going to start out maybe like this. But this has the 6 by 4 photos on the right side of the page and then a 4 by 6 right here. But again, I don't want these going off the page. So I'm just going to swap them. So if you have that situation, you can just simply swap the photos and do something like this. Now I don't have a 5 by 7. I've already printed the photos I want to use because I knew I wanted these sizes. I wanted these ones to be all a little bit bigger. This one, I could crop, but I wanted to see more of that background. I wanted to remember this was coming in on the paddleboard and going by where all of the boat slips are right there. So I wanted to have that whole background. So over here, there's some other options that I can do. I'm looking at the background. Remember what's going to work with this strip going across like that. I could have this here, and I could have these stacked. They're going the opposite direction, but this is going to be 6 inches instead of 5 because I've got a 6 by 4. So then we have a little bit more, less room for photos over here. So that could work. And then instead of having the title here, I could just swap it and put it here. So that could definitely work. And these actually could even be, because these are even, these are both 4 inches tall. So those would kind of lend itself well to being across the page from each other and have an even look. And we can still have our paper cut the same way. So I am very much liking this situation right here. Let's look at one more though. So here is another opportunity. We have, this is kind of like that first one, but different configurations. So in this situation, I would probably have this one here and maybe move this one over here and have this over here so that he's, again, looking into the page. This one I'll have in this spot, so it's looking into this page, and this one, the direction doesn't matter. So something like that. And then maybe this one right here and this one right here. So instead of my journaling spot here, you can switch that out with a photo. So then our right-hand page is configured exactly the same. Now over here, instead of a 5x7 or a 7x5, I've got a 6x4 and I have another 4x6. So it's a matter of how can I make this work? I'll have plenty of room on the page, but how do I want to make it work? We have the embellishment cluster here. So that could maybe take the place right here, or just do something like this or like this. So we have an embellishment cluster here. So I could definitely work with that as well. But I think I actually like the configuration of this one the best. So I'm going to go ahead and put my photos back to this configuration, and then I'll tell you my thought process for the paper. Okay, so we're back to this configuration. Now this one I am kind of pointed that way, but I'm looking straight ahead, and at least it's looking into this other layout. So that's not going to bother me quite as much as if these ones were over here. So we've got this configuration, and I need to select a couple of papers to go down here. We have some banners here, and then you know me, I love embellishment clusters. So we'll be doing some fun embellishment clusters as well. But after I was looking at that other travel collection, I remembered that there's this travel collection from last year, and look at how perfect these colors go. These are more my speed with the brighter colors, but we have a lot of bright colors in the photos and a lot of bright colors in the paper. So we'll talk about how to kind of tone that down so we don't have color and pattern overload. But look at how perfect this one is. This little pocket card close to my heart. Used to have pocket cards, and there are still some available on the website, but this one was perfect. Life is a grand adventure. Enjoy the journey. This trip paddleboarding was definitely a journey. We went in the afternoon and the wind was starting to pick up, and oh my gosh, it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back the whole way. Our arms got such a workout. My husband actually lost his sunglasses, his Ray-Ban sunglasses, and he's still devastated. He's tried to replace them and they don't have the exact same ones anymore. But he was standing and paddling and the wind blew him over and his glasses went overboard, and he definitely learned a valuable lesson. Don't wear sunglasses that you care about. So I have some other, pocket cards that were from this collection as well. I may or may not include, but look at the stickers. We've got having a great time. That could work. Even though this isn't necessarily a travel theme, we were just an hour away from home up in the mountains. This was our first time at paddleboarding, and it was a trip with just the 2 of us. We left the kids with some friends back at home. So it was really a fun kind of getaway for us for the whole day. This enjoying the view could work. So there's a lot of stickers here that could work, and I'll probably bring in some stamps and dies as well. Now this wouldn't work, but look at the yellow. We've got a lot of yellow here, and there's just little pops of yellow in the photos. So that could work to help kind of highlight that. The other thing is that since the sketch only has the paper down at the bottom, that's going to help to keep the pattern down at the bottom and not right behind the photos so that it's not taking away from the photos. This map, that color works really well, especially with that water. So it could work. It doesn't have to be literal. It's not, it doesn't have to necessarily be, travel theme, but let's see what else might work. There's a bigger piece if I need it. And then this potentially could work too. All of those colors would blend nicely. But again, I don't need a lot of pattern. I have some of these colors in here though, so I don't know, we'll see. And actually, it's pointing the wrong way, so I would need a bigger piece if I'm going to use this one so that those little geotags are pointing the right way. This one's not going to work because it is too travel themed, all those little icons. And then we're back to the patterns that we already saw. So let's see what we think of all of these patterns. Now this one, that could work. Maybe I just do a line of the geotags, and that could be this strip that goes across right here. I still am leaning toward this yellow because it kind of brings out that pop of yellow that we just see a little bit. So let me try this just for the colors. I'd kind of do something like that. Or I could make the yellow, since we have just like strips of yellow here, the yellow could be the strip. So we're still keeping it, just using it in, you know, real sparingly. I could use this as the bigger strip across the bottom, or this as the bigger strip across the bottom. And now that I have this down here, I feel like this is kind of not enough pop. It does match the water really well, but as I've pointed out in many videos before, sometimes if you let one of the colors that's prominent in the photos be only in the photos and don't bring it out in the paper, it helps your photos to pop even more. So I am leaning toward this one, and I know it's upside down, but I just don't want that zip strip in the way. I just want to look at the colors. And I actually think that I really like this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these, and we'll see how I like it once it's all laid out. I cut my pieces. I like how this looks. I want to point out that I did end up adding this extra 1/4 inch strip in the Glacier. This is that same color as the map paper, but just cardstock. And so this was not called for in the sketch, but I decided just to add this little tiny strip between the two so that we can still draw in that color that's up in my photos. Now I did white for the background because a lot of times I do start with a white background, and especially in this case because I do have so many bright colors, I wanted to have that white neutral background to start with. But I'm going to bring in some colors in other ways to kind of go behind my photos. I found a couple of pocket cards that would work, and if you look here, I've swapped these, but there's supposed to be a journaling card under here. I could have added some sort of journaling like that. I was looking at another pocket card, but I really wasn't loving this green. There wasn't another pocket card that I liked. And I did find this pocket card that I liked, but the horizontal version like this has the peachish color up here, and I did not like that with my photos. So then I thought, okay, well, I could use this and I could use this because I wanted to use this and I couldn't think of another way to use it. I didn't want it down here because then it's right navy on top of navy. It didn't pop. So I thought, well, what if I put it here and I have my photo underneath there, because this photo is cute, but it's not like super necessary in being the star of the show. So I'm going to use a flip-flop, and I'll show you how those work at the end of this video, and then we will lift it up. So actually this is going to go backwards and upside down so that when we lift our flip-flap up, I will have my journaling spot right here, and then you'll see this other photo. So I'm going to go ahead and put those aside for now and just work with these photos. Now I did matte them in white, and you might think, well, the white doesn't really pop off the white, but there are a couple ways to work with that. So one way is to ink around the edges of all of the photo mats and just add a little bit of pop. And in fact, I think I might actually use the Sundance because I'm only bringing in a little bit of the yellow. So it might be a good opportunity to do that around the photos and help them to pop a little bit, but not as much as adding another matte. A lot of times I will double matte, but in this case, I don't think I want that much pop. The other way I'm going to bring in some color is to do some stenciling. Now this is an older stencil, you might have it in your stash. It was meant to be just kind of like this kind of flourish design, but to me it looks like water splashes, and I've used this as water splashes in a pool layout before, and so I think I'm going to use that with just a soft bit of Glacier ink behind my photos, just to add another little bit of color. And then I did talk about possibly using this sticker. That's going to add a lot of yellow up here. So I want to be sure to keep this really soft. And I decided on the Glacier because, first of all, it's supposed to represent water, but I did consider a light bit of yellow, but then this bright yellow wouldn't have really worked on top of that. So I'm going to stick with the Glacier, and I'll probably do it in a few spots around the layout. And then the other way I'm going to bring in some color is this pocket card here, because that's going to bring in the navy that's down here. The little northeast, south, and west will work for this because we are, having an adventure even though it's not travel. And I'm going to strategically cut this so that I can get it to kind of pop out from a few photos. This is another really good way to use scraps. So I will cut this and then cut what's hidden and then use that probably over here so that the navy then will kind of pop off of that stenciling that I'm going to do, and the yellow will pop off of that. In fact, I'll probably want a little bit to stick up like that, and maybe choose one other area to have the navy blue behind and strategically use this card. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up and get started and take you along for the ride. I'm going to start off with my stenciling here. I have a blending brush, and this is great for using with stencils, and it gives a nice soft amount of ink. I started off behind where the photo will be because when you first set it down, it does give more of a blobby look. So I started behind the photo and then kind of feathering out so it goes to a soft color, and that looks really good. And I'm going to do it in another spot. I want to kind of try to line it up as best I can and bring the color up a little bit further. I decided I want it further than I originally thought, especially since that title sticker and the paper will be over there. I didn't glue anything down yet because I knew I would be doing this stenciling. And actually, after I do this stenciling, I did 3 points basically to keep a visual triangle, but I realized that I needed more color in the background. So I am going to go back later and add even more stenciling, and I really like the end result. Even though it is harder to go back later, it's better to start with less because you can always add more, but you can't take away. So less is more, as they say, especially with stencils. Now I have this Sundance and I'm going around the edges of my photos. I will do this with every photo just to give a little bit of color and another little pop of yellow. However, I realized after I finished that the yellow in this kit is actually honey butter. So the yellow I used is a little bit darker, a little more of an orangey yellow, but it ended up being okay. It still gives that pop of yellow that I was after. Now for the pocket card. So I mentioned that this is a good use for your scraps, and I have done this in many layouts before where I just have little scraps of a paper pack left where I just kind of, cut the scraps down to make sure that they're straight and make sure that they are in varying sizes, but just kind of tuck them around photos, and it really makes for an interesting look. And then you're able to get lots of colors and patterns. If you have like a whole bunch of colors or a bunch of patterns left from a paper pack, but you're down to scraps, just kind of tuck them every which way behind your photos. And it's really hard to mess up. Just make sure you have the colors balanced. I think that would be my biggest tip, is if you have some, like especially a dark color like this navy or like a red, you want to have maybe one in one corner and one in the opposite corner. And remember your visual triangles and keep heavy colors, separated, and keep all of the patterns balanced. But that's a great way to use up your patterns. I pulled a bunch of stickers off of the sticker sheet, and then I also stamped and colored a bunch of images from my stamp collection. Now, I don't believe that any of these are still available. They are all in my summer and outdoors stamp collection, but they all worked really well. I love this little life vest and the paddle. The paddle is supposed to be for a kayak or a canoe on this set, but when you're on a stand-up paddleboard, you only have one paddle on the handle. So I just cut the other one off, and then I'll use a pen to kind of color in and make it look like it's supposed to be there. This last that I showed you where that sunshine arrow and these sunglasses were from, that is from a set that was recently on clearance. So hopefully you snagged it or you already had it in your collection. I've used it for so many summer layouts. I am just coloring in the lenses so that it looks like sunglasses, and then I'm adding a little white gel pen mark. It's really hard to see here in the video, but it really makes it look like sunglasses. And then I will use all of these fun little embellishments, and I am going to mess around with them for quite a bit. Now, I am going to give you some embellishing tips here, as I always do, but just know that I love the embellishing process, and I have been known to take forever and a day. So I mess with this quite a bit. Obviously, it's sped up, and I've even cut parts out, but just I've been told that you guys like watching me do the embellishing, so I did leave a lot of it in, and I'll try to talk you through my decisions as we go. So I knew that I had my title that was yellow up high, and I also have those yellow bands going across the middle. So I wanted to separate all of the yellow bits. So this sunshine arrow, at first, I was thinking of, having that be the second point of my visual triangle, and then I would then add another yellow embellishment over to this right cluster, but I ended up not really having a very good another yellow piece to use. So I am going to remove that from this cluster here. And since it is a pretty large, substantial embellishment, I'm going to pull it over to the far right, as far right as I can, so that it's separated from that yellow title. Now I'm trying to work it into this little cluster here, but the diamond is actually really hard to work with. It's kind of an awkward shape for an embellishment cluster. So I couldn't really figure out a way to get those to work together. So I ended up putting it here. I had a lot of space left over on this photo, and it is, diagonal from the title. And then I'll add another little bit of yellow up to the top right. It's not going to be like a real prominent visual triangle. And then I'm just trying to spread out the colors so that I have all of the colors represented in each of my visual triangles. Now I do have just a little bit of toffee. I have some in that compass sticker that's in the bottom left. And then I have another little arrow that says there's no place like here that I have in the top right. And so I wanted those also to be kind of diagonal from each other so that those colors are spread out across the page. And by spreading the colors out like that, it helps draw your eye across the page. Now, as I'm trying to find a place for this, I'm realizing that I don't really like that toffee piece. It's kind of, I don't know, hanging out in no man's land. So I'm going to move it over on the far right here. And I like how that draws the eye across to the far right. I wanted a little bit of red up here, and I was trying that tag, and it was just too big, and it was a little bit too travel themed for me, so I wasn't liking it. But there were these little geo tags in red, and so I like how those look up there, and it draws the red across the page. I had these two little X's left on the sticker sheet. There were a whole bunch on the sticker sheet, but I used most of them and just had these two left. So since they both match the colors I'm using, I figured might as well use them. So I just stuck them right there. And then I wanted to switch out this little embellishment. I like the "This Way" sticker, and I like how all those little arrows are sticking over. I have a lot of space over on the left, and I was trying to kind of stretch this embellishment cluster out to the left more to fill that space, and I will eventually do that. I really like using leaves for this kind of thing because I just like having those little like flowy things in an embellishment cluster. But leaves didn't really work here, so I thought, well, maybe these little flourishes would work. And I thought they could kind of resemble water splatters as well. I decided to cut them in silver glitter paper. Maybe that was my mistake. It kind of glammed it up a little bit too much. But I really think that what I didn't like about it is just the style. So I'm going to come back with something even better. Now here is where I realized I wanted to add more stenciling. There was just a little bit too much white space for me. And if you know me, you know I would typically add splatters if there's too much white space, but I was really liking this stencil look, so I added it in several more places, basically wherever there was just a little bit too much white. Again, I wanted to start out with less because I was afraid of doing too much stenciling, but after I got everything in place where I liked it, I decided I needed a little bit more. All right, so I took off those little swirls. I had already glued this one down here and pulled it up, and it left a little glue mark. So I need to make sure I cover it. And I found these wooden arrows in my stash. I often forget about arrows, but they're such a great way to add movement, and you can kind of add them every which way, and it adds kind of that same element that you would have with the swirls that I had on there or with leaves. But when you just need something either for a masculine layout or for a sports or outdoor layout like this. And so I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. These are really old from my stash. They're that thicker wood that Close to My Heart used to carry. So it does add a bit of bulk to the layout, but I think that it was just the perfect finishing touch. After I added this arrow up here and of course glued it down, I realized, oh no, that's where my flip flop is going. I can't overlap the photo. So I swapped it out with a little heart. I had to cover it with something because of the glue mark. But you know what? There's no mistakes in scrapbooking, right? It's just an opportunity to embellish, maybe a little bit differently. So after these close-ups of how it turned out, I'm going to show you how to attach the flip flap. It's super easy. Close to My Heart used to have lots of sizes of flip flops, but since they're going out of business, most of them have sold out. But the 3x4 is still available on my website. Now, there is a rumor that Stampin' Up! May be carrying flip flops in the future, so hopefully we will all still be able to get our beloved flip flops. But you're going to have the sticky side facing you, so the release paper is facing me. I glued the two pieces together just so they don't shift around. Then you're going to peel that release paper off, fold that back. It's actually better if you fold it back before you take the release paper off and kind of burnish it, but this way works too. And then you're just going to stick it right down over your page protector. I'm going to burnish it in and then really crease that fold well so that the fold stays down. And I have not had any problems with them coming off. It's a really strong adhesive. So if you're interested in getting your hands on any of these amazing flip-flops, I'll leave the link down in the description below, as well as anything else I use that's still available. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. I post scrapbooking videos every week. And here's another video on the screen that I think you might enjoy. I'll see you over there. Have a great day.